You're welcome to the 8th edition of Bridgeafrique magazine, and this is the one-on-one section. In this section, we'll be talking to the Consular General of Uganda to China, Her Excellency Ambassador Judyth Nsababera. You're welcome, Your Excellency. It's nice to meet you. Your Excellency, we have some few questions for you here. Your Excellency, can you tell us about yourself, your diplomatic background? What is life of an ambassador like? Has life of an ambassador affected your private life? What can you tell us about China from what you have seen or heard so far? Generally, your experience about China since you came here.
Thank you so much, Bridgeafrique Media, for your opportunity to share a little bit about myself and my country, which I represent here in Guangzhou as a Consul General. My names are Ambassador Judyth Nsababera. I have been here as I was appointed ambassador back in 2021, and I've been in the diplomatic field, I say give or take 13 years, working closely with the United Nations, peacekeeping, operations, and disarmament. Those were the areas where I focused on. I feel like I've always represented my country. My first instance was when I played professional sport, which I got a chance to play the US Open and come to the US to be able to represent my country. And so I feel like I've always been representing my country in one way or the other. Yeah, my life as a diplomat, I don't know. I try not to really focus on life as a diplomat. I focus on life in general, being able to experience culture, to experience life in a different country. So it's been really rewarding and a really great experience, especially in the last 3 years where China was closed off and it was a little difficult, but it gave me a chance to slow down, to learn the language. So I speak Idian of Zhongguan, but it's been a really great experience, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity. I'm looking forward to ways in which my country can engage even further with China to have a mutually beneficial partnership. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Ma, what are the requirements for obtaining Uganda visa, either from China or from other African countries to Uganda?
Wow. I'll tell you, Uganda is the easiest country you can travel to. We've been doing visas on arrival for a very long time. And now to even make your travel and experience in Uganda and arriving in Uganda even more seamless, we have the e-visa. So you apply for the visa online, and then you arrive in Uganda, it's already processed, it's in the system. It takes a shorter time for you to go through and get your stamp and be able to experience Uganda. So that's something that Uganda has always done. And I think our country, our government, our leader, our president always saw that it was a priority for people to come, to have an easy way to access Uganda. So we've always been doing visa on arrival. I'm excited at the partnerships that Uganda is building with other countries to allow visa-free initiatives. That's a good thing. We hope that in South Africa, for Ugandans traveling to South Africa at some point, will be able to travel without getting a visa. They just need to buy a ticket and go. You can travel to Ghana without a visa. There are countries in Africa where you can travel to without a visa. So that's exciting. But in regards to traveling to Uganda, that's the easiest country you'll visit. So get your ticket, go online, apply for the visa online, you arrive in Uganda, and the visa is there. So, yeah. But also one thing I want to mention is that we have a visa that you can apply for. It's the East African visa. You can apply for and be able to travel through 3 different countries at once, at any one time or during your trip. So this visa you can get, I believe it's about $100. You can travel to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and I'm sure other East African countries are going to add on so that we're able to just travel all through the East African community without any visas. So yes, I'm excited. I'm really happy about our policy in regards to people coming into our country and finding it really easy to apply for a visa and to experience the beauty that our country has to offer.
Ambassador Ma, what is the state of bilateral ties between Uganda and China in the context of the growing influence and impact of the Belt and Road Initiative?
China. Interesting question. The Belt and Road Initiative is celebrating 10 years since its initiation. There's so much that we can learn from China in regards to security, in regards to development. I'll give you an example. The city of Guangzhou, where I live, the area specifically where I lived 20 years ago was rice fields, but now it's high-rise apartments. And then I was also, I got a chance to go to Zhongshan. They had an investment conference to attract outside investors. And one of the things that they mentioned was that the government of China, what they decided that any city that's over 1 million people has to have a high-speed train. So these initiatives that come from the government and are initiated in the different cities are ways in which, as Uganda, I'll say, for example, can learn better, but also in the infrastructure. If I give an example that if I ask you what's happening in Central African Republic or in Mali or in Cameroon, most people don't know, because we know more about the Western countries, America, Europe, than we know more about our continent. But the issue is that the infrastructure is not developed. It's very difficult for me to be able to travel from Uganda to Mali, for example. Historically, we would have to go to Europe, and then from Europe, then come back to Africa. So if we can find ways to develop the transportation and infrastructure system within the continent, it will allow us to develop and understand our development process even better, and even understand what's happening on the continent and all the opportunities that the continent has to offer. So for me, I look forward to an instance where I could just get onto a high-speed train and be able to travel all through Africa, places where I could travel to in Africa where I don't need a visa. For us to be able to communicate that way, I think that's the best way for us to be able to promote development in Africa, but more so to learn about what's happening in China and how China has been able to develop.
Madam Ambassador, what is your assessment of Uganda community in China? Has Chinese been supportive, especially in terms of integration and visa policies?
The experience really depends on who you talk to. I've had very many positive stories, but that doesn't negate the few stories that we've had where people haven't had really good experiences. I think what's important is one, to understand that you're in a different country, and it will take some time for people to understand you and be able to integrate, to have you integrate closely. I encourage people to learn the language, the culture. That's one of the things that I focused on when I first came to China. Where do I get Chinese lessons? Because if I can greet somebody in their language, that's one step closer to integrating. Food is also an important component of the Chinese culture, being able to eat their food. I've seen places where I go and I'm using chopsticks, and they're really quite impressed and saying, wow, you can use kwizi. So I think that the experience varies from one person to another in regards to how to their lives here in China. So I wouldn't take one negative story and equate it to everybody, but we have really good experiences. I'll give an example. We have a social media sensation called Rose in China. She's been married to a Chinese man for the last 8 years. They have a little boy, and she's got this channel that has attracted so many people following her life, right? And so that's a good experience. That's a good story to share. So the experience of Ugandans in China varies really from who you talk to, what they're doing in the country. They're Ugandans who are married to Chinese people, whose families have accepted them. So I think that overall, I think that the experience is great, but there needs to be more that we can do for people here in China to understand who we are, to accept us as Africans or Ugandans or people of a different culture.
Xenophobic attack has been a big issue for immigrants and foreigners in South Africa. What role is the government of Uganda playing towards ensuring higher human safety and security standards for foreigners in Uganda?
It's really unfortunate about the xenophobic attacks. But if I will speak for Uganda, I'll tell you that Ugandan people are one of the kindest, most welcoming people that you'll meet on the continent. And we're very proud of that. And when I tell people to visit Uganda, I tell them to visit because of the people. The natural resources, the beauty, everything else that you can experience in Uganda is secondary to the wonderful warmth that you get from the people of Uganda. We value our visitors. Maybe there are isolated incidences where somebody doesn't have a good experience, but all in all, generally the government doesn't really have to do much to ensure that people are kind and people are warm. It's just naturally what Ugandan people are doing. But what the government is doing is making sure that security is a number one priority. Our president, security is a number one priority anywhere you go in Uganda. We protect our investors, we protect our visitors, we protect our country, and we make sure that anybody who's in our country has a safe stay in the country. So that is a number one priority for our country, for sure.
What are other career options you would suggest the youth to focus on, and why, Your Excellency?
Wow. I wouldn't suggest a particular career. I would suggest that anything that you choose, you need to be happy. When you're happy in a job that you do, in work that you do, it doesn't feel like work. It feels more of a passion. But what I would really suggest for people to start looking into is agriculture. One, because Uganda is a country that is richly blessed. Anything you put in the ground is going to grow. We have abundance of land and so many resources. So I think that, one, because people are always going to need food. There are innovative ways to do agriculture now. So that is one area that I would encourage young people to start looking into. I know farming wasn't like a cool thing to do, but I've had the opportunity of visiting farms that are so high tech. And it's amazing what output and how they're tracking quality and productivity of the farm. It's really amazing. So farming is one thing I would really encourage people to do. Another thing that I would encourage youth to do is sports. One, because I'm a recipient of what sports can do to a person's life. Creates discipline, but there are ways in which people are making money out of it. So I would love for our parents and also young parents who are coming up and have children to encourage their children to pursue sports, the arts. These are areas in which people can be creative, areas that really support somebody's human and mental development. So I think the best thing for me to do is that find something you love and do it with a passion. That's my opinion in regards to a career.
Bridgeafrique Media is currently proposing an online webinar with the topic, how African countries can establish a win-win business partnership, synergy with the world. In your view, how can synergy with the world be achieved, Your Excellency? Any last advice on how Africa can be a better place to live in, and how we can achieve a pride of place in the community of nations?
I understand you're an independent business publication focusing on development of Africa-China relationship. And I have to applaud you for doing this. And thank you so much, because we need more positive media about Africa. We need more media stories that are told by ourselves. There's a saying in African, there's an African proverb that says, until the lion learns to tell its story, the story will always be glorified by the hunter, right? So the hunter will always be the winner. And I think for a long time, we've had people telling our stories. And it's important for us to be able to control the narrative about our continent, about Africa. And so I really want to thank you so much for being able to tell stories about what Africa truly is, and also the opportunities that are available. And most especially in China. Most times people haven't had the experience of actually going to Africa. And those that have only gone for business. We're trying to increase more Chinese people coming to Africa and to Uganda specifically as well, to travel as tourists. There's a lot that Africa has to offer. Historically, the Chinese have always traveled to Europe, to America, South America. We need to promote more about Africa. And I think that with publications like yourselves, you'll be able to tell our Chinese community what Africa has to offer. So I definitely applaud you on that. And in regards to advice, I think the best advice I would say is that, being able to create partnerships that can allow you to tell a story. And thank you so much, for example, reaching out to the consulate of Uganda in Guangzhou and the embassy in Beijing of Uganda. This allows for us to be able to reach people who we would not necessarily be able to reach. So your publication goes out to several people. You have an online platform. So I think that it's great that you make these partnerships with people who are able to share what our culture and what we are, what we have to offer as African people and as Ugandans. Other partnerships that you can make are the business community, people who are invested in building partnerships, economic partnerships in Africa. So the business community, those are people who would benefit from really understanding what it's like to be what it's like to invest in Africa, to be African, and to travel to Africa. Those are the few words that I would say, because otherwise you're doing a great job really telling people about who we are through your magazine. So I'm really, really grateful. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share a little bit about myself and the country that I serve. And one last thing that I want to share is in celebration of the 60th anniversary of our relationship, our diplomatic relationship with China, Uganda saw it fitting to be able to have a direct connection. So one of the things that we've done is that we're launching Uganda Airlines flying directly from Entebbe to Guangzhou. It will allow for more travelers to go. And we're really excited about this, and we hope that you can build a partnership with them and be able to promote Uganda Airlines and have more people traveling the crane to the Pearl of Africa. So thank you so much.